Hi everyone, my name is Whitney Tawney and I am a registered dietitian in the Health Education Outreach Department. And the Eating Disorder Task Force team is so excited to have you all here today for our first event for the Claremont College's Eating Disorder Awareness Month. And we are so excited to have Jessica Setnick here to kick off our events for the month. Jessica is an author, an incredible speaker, and she's a eating disorder expert dietitian, and we're just so happy to have her. So the title of her talk is Making Food Your Friend Again.
Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Claremont. It's a pleasure to be here. You know what? I think I'd rather stand down here than up on the stage, if that's okay with, what are you going to say? No, don't do that. But I'm thrilled to be here. Great turnout. So glad you're having an Eating Disorder Awareness Month. Making food your friend again is the theme of my talk because nobody likes to come to a talk that's about eating disorders. And on top of that, I think eating disorders is even though it's Eating Disorders Awareness Month, and that's why I'm here, it's really a divisive term. Eating disorders makes us think of people with eating disorders and people without eating disorders. And really all of us, if you eat, you have the potential to have an eating disorder. So my goal here is three things. One is, if you've never really thought about food and feelings getting mixed up, to just bring your awareness level to that point where you realize, oh my gosh, all people eat, most people have feelings, so there's a potential for those things to get mixed up. Then, if you're someone who knows someone who maybe is struggling with their eating, I would like to raise your awareness to the next level of, the fact that there is help here at Claremont. There's a whole counseling department. There's also a whole health education department. There's also another department that I'm blanking on that is available for you. Oh, sorry, the health department, health services are all available for you to get help for your friend or roommate. And then in the third case, individuals who are struggling yourself, to know that it's really important that you reach out, because food issues are nothing to be ashamed of, even though for some reason in our society, if I were to say, raise your hand if you stayed up all night last night studying. People would have no problem raising their hand if they did. Raise your hand if you have a crush on one of your professors, right? It would be silly, you'd laugh, but you might raise your hand. But if I said, raise your hand if after this meal you're gonna go to the bathroom and make yourself throw up, nobody would raise their hand. And I hope no one is going to do that, but if you are, instead, come talk to me afterwards and we'll sort it out, because it's not anything that's a character flaw in you. It's an issue that comes from the biology of everyone's body, and also the things that we're exposed to. No one really knows what causes eating disorders, so in order to talk about the issues, it's important to not talk about specifically eating disorders and give things names and put people in boxes. I'd rather talk about what's going on for all of us, and then each of us, at whichever level we're on in our levels of awareness, can get hopefully to the next level. So this is not me, but it represents what I feel like sometimes after I get home from the store and I have all this food and yet nothing to eat. Does anyone else ever feel like that? Like you've got bags of food, cupboards of food, but nothing that you actually want to eat. And part of the problem is that in our culture, we have so much information about food. We have nutrition facts, food panels, and we have diet books and diet pills, and we have articles in the newspaper, and we have the internet. There's so much information. Besides that, there's also cooking shows and food-related shows on TV, and there's also hearing about things from your friends and coworkers and family. We have so much nutrition information, and we're actually the country in the world with the most eating issues and weight issues. So all this information is not actually helping us. There are countries in the world where people just go in their backyard and pick whatever grew and eat it, and they turn out okay. Those blue zones where people live to be 125 years old, they don't have a nutrition facts panel on their food. They don't have a nutrition book, a diet pill. They don't have Dr. Oz, lucky for them. We have all this stuff, and it doesn't actually help make us healthier. So my goal today is to say, stop looking at the nutrition facts panel if you were, and you don't have to raise your hand, but just think, who here thinks I'm supposed to be looking at the nutrition facts, but I don't actually know what I'm supposed to be looking for? Or I think I'm supposed to be looking for blank, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do once I get that information. It happens to be Girl Scout cookie season. We have Girl Scouts in my neighborhood. I don't have any Girl Scouts anymore in my home, but when my stepdaughter was a Girl Scout, she once was looking on the package of the cookies. And of course, I, being an eating disorder professional, I'm always on super high alert for anything that sounds, even a kernel eating disorder in my own home. And so she looks on the side and she goes, 2 Thin Mints is a serving. And I'm thinking, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? She goes, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And I thought, exactly, it is the stupidest thing I ever heard to let the side of a cardboard box tell you what you should eat. But yet we think that we're supposed to be doing that, and if we eat more than 6 crackers or whatever it says is a serving, then somehow we're doing something wrong. And it's not wrong, it's just information. But we can use information as a weapon or a tool. And for a lot of us, the information about nutrition that we are presented with in our daily lives, we use it as a weapon, not as a tool. What I would like to recommend is that we go back to the time, maybe you were a Girl Scout, maybe you weren't, but the idea that we looked in the mirror and we smiled at what we saw. Can you imagine the last time you looked in the mirror and smiled? And I don't mean smile to check and see if there's anything in your teeth, but really were overcome with happiness inside at what you saw in the mirror. We feel like somehow being critical of ourselves is going to help us. But we didn't used to feel that way. We used to be active because it was called playing, right? You're a human mammal. You did things not because of how many calories it was going to burn or how much you sweated or how much competition you were in with someone else for how far you could go, but you did it because it was fun to move, and we were all kind of on the same page as far as friendship. You know, you maybe got in your little spats with people, but it wasn't a big competition about everything. We didn't compare ourselves to other people and always find ourselves coming up short. We were able to just be without always judging ourselves. So this is really the goal. It's not to turn you into a person who's better. It's kind of to unravel all the stuff that's been heaped onto you and get you back to a person who actually is able to eat appropriately and move appropriately because you're using your internal cues. Now, my training is as a dietitian, and there are some very smart dietitians who did a really cool study where they gave 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds different size plates of macaroni and cheese. So on one day of the study, they gave different children small-sized plates. Other days, they gave medium-sized plates. On other days, they gave large plates. And depending on the size of the plate, depended on the amount of macaroni on the plate. Does that make sense? Okay. So what they found was the 3-year-olds, regardless of what size plate of macaroni and cheese you gave them, they ate almost exactly the same amount and then wandered off to go play. The 5-year-olds ate a different portion size of macaroni and cheese, depending on the amount you gave them. If they had a small plate, they ate a smaller amount. If they had a medium-sized plate, they ate a medium-sized amount. And if they had a large plate, they ate a large amount. So we learned from that somewhere between 3 and 5, we are all learning, we are teaching our children to use external cues for how much to eat instead of our internal cues. Everyone here, unless you had a feeding tube when you were born or some kind of severe problem, and I'm sorry if I'm excluding you from this, but everyone else was able to internally regulate how much to eat when they were born. And it's society and it's training that derails that. Nothing that goes on inside us. There's lots of beliefs out there, things like, oh, you can eat like that now, but wait till you're 30 or 40, or stop playing football, or stop playing tennis, or, you know, we come up with these things in our minds, or we hear things that tell us that we have to be very, very precautious about what we eat. But it turns out when you start focusing on something, you end up sometimes giving it way more attention than it needs, and it turns out we all were naturally healthy eaters when we were born. It's kind of amazing. Now, I will say, in order to be a naturally healthy eater, you also have to be, in the words of a child feeding expert, calm and unflustered. When was the last time anyone here ate a meal? Calm and unflustered. I think that is the antithesis of life in college. But the idea that you have to be able to pay attention to your internal cues in order to then listen to your internal cues, that's actually 2 huge steps that we all were able to do when we got started on this earth, but we are often not able to do now. We eat what's on our plate, we eat as much as we can now because we don't know when we're going to get our next meal, or we eat less than what we really want because someone's watching, someone's giving us the look that says, are you really going to take that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th cookie or piece of pizza or whatever, or we eat less than we want to because we think that it's going to change our weight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I have some examples because clearly no one here was born being an unhealthy eater and having their food and feelings mixed up. So let's talk about how we got here. This is an example of a birthday card. I do not think birthday cards cause eating problems. I do think they reflect what we as a culture think is funny. So here, haha, very funny, balloon arrows pointing to different parts of a fairly normal-sized child's body. Maybe she's 2, I'm just guessing. And the idea that we would tease or belittle or make fun of a normally sized child's body parts, much less a not normally sized child, doesn't matter. But the fact that we would make fun of a child's body parts and call that humor, to me, reflects that our society feels like it's okay to judge others based on how they look. And so we grow up in this culture, or you may not have grown up in this culture, but you somehow got here when you got to our culture, and you find that it leads to an internal belief that we are always being judged. Then we get bombarded with media and culture, and advertisements are a particular negative influence, because what is the purpose of advertising? To sell you something, and to sell you something you have to feel deficient. You have to feel that you need something. So every time you look at a piece of advertising, its goal is to make you feel not good enough. And it's a really weird thought. If anyone's here as an advertising major, please go out into the advertising world and make a difference and make it different, because I buy things that I like. I don't have to feel bad about myself in order to buy things, but that's the sort of MO of all advertising right now. If all of us woke up tomorrow and said, I like my frizzy hair, and I like hairy legs, and I like underarms that stink, then we would stop buying all the products that keep America's economy going, right? In order for America to survive, we have to all not like ourselves. We have to all want to dye our hair a different color. The blondes have to want to be brunette, and the brunettes have to want to be blonde, and the bald guys have to want hair transplants, and the whole thing keeps America going financially. And so when we have a feeling of not being good enough, it sends us to go buy something that will help us. Now, along with that comes messages. So, for example, here's an ad that says, moisturizers and dieting live by the same rules. If it's greasy, stay away. Well, does anyone know what would happen to your skin if you did not eat any fat or grease or any foods that had any oil in them? You'd have really dry skin, and you would need more moisturizer. Hooray for the people who sell moisturizer. This is just sort of bad-mouthing food for no reason. It has nothing to do with anything. And yet, it's a message. And again, we've already spent more time looking at this advertisement than you would ever spend, let's say, looking at it in a magazine. But advertisements are not meant to educate you. You're not supposed to pore over them. They're supposed to trigger something you already believe, so that when you see it, it feels true to you. So this is supposed to already feel true. We already have the message that you're supposed to stay away from greasy foods. Ha-ha, this is already pulling on that and makes us feel like it's already true. Here's another example. Proof that fruit is good for your body. Okay, I get it. It's a play on words of Fruit of the Loom. I mean, I get puns. I actually really like puns. But I don't see here proof that fruit is good for your body. I don't know if you noticed, but right here, she's actually holding an apple. But clearly that is not the point of the ad, let's eat more apples, right? Proof that fruit is good for your body. If I didn't see this picture and you said, give me some proof that fruit is good for your body, I'd say, well, I mean, fruit helps, the fiber helps your digestive system, and the nutrients help you in every part of your body. And some fruits have, antioxidants, and the colors in fruits are the anthocyanins are really good for fighting cancer and that kind of thing. I could give you all kinds of reasons that proof that fruit is good for your body, but I don't see any of them in this picture. What I see is a model who, very well may be naturally lean. I'm not going to judge her based on her appearance, but she may have also not eaten for 3 days before this photo shoot, because that's her job, to look a certain way, right? And it has absolutely nothing to do with fruit. I don't even know that it has anything to do with underwear, but it is an ad for underwear. And so the idea that food is good for you then leads to the idea, of course, that food is bad for you. And then the next step is associating ourselves as good or bad depending on the food we eat. And now we're getting to a really dangerous place. So this says, keep the change, you earned it. And then right here it says, so good it might make you good. Eek. So now, not only is food good for your body, but you might actually be a good person based on what you eat. And then, of course, the other side is you might also be a bad person based on what you eat. So now food has gone from being an infant where you just eat because it's normal, to being a toddler where you eat more based on external cues, to being a teen or an adult where you actually start to feel like a good or bad person based on what you eat. So this one says it just tastes sinful, and I get the pun, it's devil's food, sinful, haha, but it's also fat-free pudding snacks, meaning, in my mind, I read this and I see that fat-free just tastes sinful, not fat-free Jell-O pudding actually is sinful. And by the way, if you actually ate a piece of devil's food cake, you're doomed, okay? This isn't even talking about devil's food cake, but the idea that you could be a bad person based on what you eat. And I don't know if anyone remembers this campaign, but I cut off what it's actually for, the advertisement that it's for, because I think it's so significant. Respect yourself in the morning. To me, that does not have anything to do with eating breakfast. That has to do with where did you spend the night before, okay? And I think that is very relevant when you're in college, actually. But there was also a campaign, an ad in this campaign where a man got on the subway eating a donut, and it was like a donut came around his body, and he couldn't get out of the subway because of the donut. And this one, clearly, I get the pun, cinnamon buns on her buns, totally get it. But to me, this plays on that belief that we had when we were a kid, when we heard you are what you eat, right? So the idea that cinnamon buns pop up on your butt when you eat cinnamon buns is like saying that cornflakes pop up on your body when you eat cornflakes. I mean, the whole thing's super dumb. It doesn't make any sense, but it's something that as you're flipping a page or as you're watching TV, it clicks into something that you already believe or that you believed when you were a kid, that you heard, you are what you eat. And I will tell you, cinnamon buns are not the most nutritious breakfast. I'm a dietitian. That is just a fact. I get it. So if this were an ad for, let's say, a hearty, nutritious breakfast of scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and maybe a glass of milk, and was saying, don't eat cinnamon buns for breakfast, eat that well-balanced breakfast instead, I'm not saying I like the ad, but I'm saying that there could be some actual nutritious truth to the ad. But does anyone remember what this actually was an ad for? Nutri-Grain bars. So of all the things an adult human would eat for breakfast that they could feel good about, a Nutri-Grain bar that actually has less fruit in it than 1 fig Newton is not the thing that I would be promoting as the better choice for breakfast. I would actually rather you eat cinnamon buns because they have more nutrition in them than a Nutri-Grain bar. So very mixed messages that we get. Adding to the mixed messages, the idea that celebrities are thin, but if you see there, plus their diet secrets. Wait a minute, am I supposed to be shocked that they're so thin, or am I supposed to want to admire that they're so thin? And how can I get their diet secrets? And this is something you see more and more now, which is bigger is better, skinny is scary, the idea that you can be too thin. And people often ask me when this kind of stuff comes out, aren't you glad that now they're focusing on how you can be too skinny? Well, no, I don't really admire any of this because the whole idea is you can't be right. We're watching you. These are the messages we take away from this, not that, be careful that you get too big, be careful you don't get too small. What we take away from this is people are watching and there's a right way and a wrong way to be, and other people are the judge of what that right and wrong way is. And to me, that's where we get this. We get every bite we take, we start thinking about how it's going to affect our body. Instead of thinking of food as fuel for our body, we think of food as something we have to work off, burn off. We have to earn food by exercising, and that is really, really negative. Now, none of this causes eating disorders. Eating disorders have a biological basis, but none of us know if we won or lost the genetic lottery for the genes for eating disorders. So when we start messing with our food, that's when those genes can turn on and we can actually develop an obsession or a problem. Regardless of whether you actually develop an eating disorder or not, being obsessed with your food and calories and exercise is no way to live. That is a way that you end up being a very one-sided person without a lot to talk about and impairing your functioning in other areas because you're so focused. And it's a real problem that we have in our culture because it's something we can all talk about. If you came to this meal or any meal and you said, I'm really worried, guys, you're talking to your friends, I'm really worried because my parents were fighting last night, and what if they get divorced, and then what if there isn't enough money for me to finish college, and what if I heard on the debates last night that they might have the draft, and what if I get drafted and I have to go in the military, and I don't really like wearing camouflage, it's just not my color, and but you're just like have all these anxieties, and I know I'm kind of joking, but that's a hard, if you came to that table with your friends, it would just be a little overwhelming. People would just be like, dude, what's up? And so, but you can go to the table, you can go, you know what, I'm feeling kind of flabby. I'm going to start running every day instead of lunch. Does anyone want to come too? Or running after lunch, or running before lunch, or I'm going to start blank, something exercise related, or something food related, or I want to start Weight Watchers. Does anyone want to go with me? Those are the kind of things that it's okay to talk about. Those are sort of common topics, and it's a bonding thing sometimes. For a while in Dallas where I live, You could not go to a meal without people talking about how many Weight Watchers points were in that meal. It made me not want to socialize anymore. And most of my friends know not to say stuff about this around me because they know basically I'll just say something totally buzz-killing like, this conversation is making me have a bad self-esteem. Can we talk about something else, please? Because I don't mind if they talk about it when I'm not there, but I don't like talking about that stuff. And so when our food and our weight issues get mixed up, it really causes us to become very unifocal, very one-sided type of individuals. And then everything you decide to do depends on what kind of food is going to be there. Can I go on that retreat because I don't know what kind of food is going to be there? Or maybe I'll bring my food, my own food, and that's going to exclude you in some ways. I had a friend who dated a girl who brought power bars everywhere she went and literally put a power bar on a plate at a wedding and cut it with a knife and fork, thinking somehow she was blending in and concealing the fact that she was not eating the same food as everyone else. You become very unifocal and obsessed, just like someone who's obsessed with anything, stamp collecting, cars, orchids. It's very hard to have a well-rounded life when you're super obsessed with anything. And sometimes you have to. If you're an Olympic athlete, you have to be obsessed with certain things. But if you're trying to get through college, you need to be balanced and you need a way of getting through life, and fueling your body appropriately is the way to do it, not obsessing about food. But the line can get very blurry because society really embraces and admires us for being overly preoccupied with our food. I brought some cupcakes. They're back in the kitchen, and I'm going to bring them out, and we're going to do an experiment, and everyone's going to eat a cupcake. Okay, just joking, there's no cupcakes. But just me talking about that, what went through your head in that minute? There are probably some people who were like, she can't make me eat a cupcake just because it's a stupid experiment. I'm not doing it. No. Where can I go right now to hide, right? And some people were like, yum, cupcakes. I'm really full, but I'll still eat a cupcake, right? It's interesting that just the idea of food can trigger feelings for us, and we sometimes don't recognize how much our feelings and our food are mixed in together. I just used it as an experiment to bring your attention to the fact that there are instant thoughts that we have when we think about food, look at pictures of food, right? It's very rare the person who's like, oh, cupcakes, huh? Okay, well, let's see. Am I hungry? I don't know. I'm not really hungry for a cupcake right now, so I don't know. I'll see how it looks, and if I like the looks of it, I'll probably wrap it up and take it home to have later. I mean, we don't put that much. We usually just gut react to things, right? And then now some people are like, wait, there's no cupcakes? Now I'm going to have to find a cupcake later, because I'm going to be thinking about cupcakes until I get one, right? And I'm not saying any of these thoughts and feelings are right or wrong. I'm just saying we have to start being more honest with ourselves about what's going on with us. And if those things feel like they're on a roller coaster, then that's the time we need to get professional help. This is what happens when you don't get enough to eat. You just get really tired, and dieting is put out there as the solution to everything, right? There haven't been any Slim Fast commercials in a long time, but if you ever saw Slim Fast commercials, they always showed a large, sad person who went on the Slim Fast plan and then became a happy, skinny person, yay! And the Slim Fast commercial that just sort of blew my mind away, and I don't know if they had it out here, but because I know they did not have it in New York. When I spoke there, no one knew what I was talking about. But in Dallas, they had this commercial where this woman was a kindergarten teacher during 9/11, and she was large, which maybe was appropriate for her, maybe not. I'm not judging anybody, but she judged herself, and she said she needed to lose weight because during 9/11, she became very scared that if another disaster happened, she wouldn't be able to help her kindergarteners. And so she went on the Slim Fast plan, and she lost weight. So instead of saying to her principal, like, I'm a little concerned, we don't have a disaster preparedness plan, or instead of going to a therapist and talking about how traumatic that was to have your whole city be completely devastated. No, she lost weight, and now she can carry 40 kindergartners out of a building before it falls down, right? I don't know. How did being skinny solve all her problems? I do not know, but that's the message that we get, right, from that kind of thing. And really what dieting does is it makes you tired and it makes you eat whatever is in front of you. And it's not always nutritious, right? But everyone has been in this situation. It's totally normal. I happen to be Jewish. We happen to have Yom Kippur. We don't eat for 25 hours. And then when your 25 hours is over, we go to this big communal meal called the break fast. And you put like 10 bagels and lox and cream cheese on your plate and kugel. And I see people nodding, so there's other Jewish people here too, okay? And then after I eat like 3/4 of a bagel, I go, who put all this food on my plate? Right? It's totally normal when you're over hungry to eat what's in front of you, even if it's not what your body needs to be nourished. So we undereat thinking it's going to help us, and it doesn't. We end up in front of a giant portion of food, and then we end up overeating. And it becomes a pendulum, because if you undereat, then no doubt at some point you will overeat, and then you will tell yourself, oh, I can't believe I overate. I should probably skip lunch or skip dinner. And then you're over hungry, and then, right? We should all just be our pendulum should just be flipping along. But most people, when you grew up, let's say it's an hour before dinner, and you said, hey, I'm hungry, to whoever your caregivers were, they would say, thank you, it's an hour till dinner. Don't eat anything, don't spoil your appetite. Wouldn't it have been nice if someone said, okay, it's an hour till dinner, so what can you think of that would have tided you for an hour? So that you could have, let's say, eaten an apple and peanut butter or half a turkey sandwich and then still been hungry for dinner. And in case you weren't hungry for dinner, they would have said to you, oh, well, that's how you learn. It turns out 2 pieces of pizza is too much to eat an hour before dinner and still be hungry for dinner. And then you learned that instead of undereating, overeating, and keeping it going back and forth. This is my image of how we all want to feel. We all want to feel loved and cherished by someone like us, but instead we often all feel like this, right? We feel like we don't fit in. And what happens is we compare ourselves to what we see. These are all very cute girls, but this is what we usually see of them. And so we don't realize we feel like the ugly duckling. Let me show you again. This is what they really look like. Okay, but this is what we see. So we walk around feeling like the ugly duckling, that there's something wrong with us. And that is totally normal. It is normal to feel different from other people because internally we imagine that everyone else is the same and we're different. And when you look on Facebook or Instagram, people do not, some people are oversharers and they put like their yeast infection on Instagram or whatever, okay? Sorry to talk about that during lunch. I was just trying to think of the grossest thing I could, okay? But most people put their vacation or the flowers that they got for Valentine's Day, right? Most people put their new house or whatever on Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, etc. And so you end up comparing your normal life, which has its ups and downs, with everybody else's ups, ups, right? And so we end up feeling like the ugly duckling when really we look just like these people when they aren't super glam. And so sometimes we start to focus on certain areas and body parts. And when you focus on something, as I mentioned before, it's the same with food. When you start focusing on food, food takes over too much of your life. When you start focusing on a body part, it takes over too much of your life. And so I'll admit, I sometimes pluck my eyebrows. And if you've ever been an eyebrow plucker, you know that you start looking in the mirror and plucking, and you're like, oh my God, and you're looking in the magnifying mirror, and you're like, I'm all eyebrow, how could I have gone out of the house like this? And then you suddenly realize, like, I gotta stop plucking, like step away from the mirror, because I'm gonna be eyebrow bald if I don't stop plucking. And eventually you walk by a mirror and you realize, oh, my eyebrows have returned to a normal place on my face. But it feels like you're all eyebrow. And if you focus on your thigh gap or your lack of thigh gap, or you focus on your nose, or you focus on that zit that no one else can see, and they're like, let me find a microscope so I can see what the big deal is. You know, if you focus on something, it becomes bigger and bigger. And so this applies to guys, this applies to women. We focus on something that we think is a flaw. We compare ourselves to people we think are perfect, and we always come out short. If you look at something like this, it is very clear that this is computer generated, right? Pandas don't wear pants. If they did, they would be called pantas. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know. But pandas don't wear pants. Pandas don't do kung fu. Pandas, I think, for the most part, don't walk on their 2 hind feet, right? It's easy to look at this and say this is computer generated. But we don't look at this and say this is computer generated, even though it looked like that before it looked like that. It's harder for us to, we know that. We know you can do this on your computer, right? You don't have to be a celebrity. You can take out the freckles. You can make someone's hair blonder. If you can do this on your phone, nothing you see ever in a magazine is ever as it started out. And so we have a situation where we started out where we were people that just wore sheets tied up with a piece of string, okay? Nobody was that particular about it. At some point, we got to where clothes were actually made for people and sewn on people, like Scarlett O'Hara. And then we got to a place where the Industrial Revolution happened, and people would buy clothes that were semi-made, but they would expect a tailor to finish it for them. And then we got to a place where the clothes just show up in the store, and we forgot that the clothes are supposed to fit us, and we think we are supposed to fit the clothes. And so when you go to the store and the clothes don't fit you, you feel like there's something wrong with you. Instead of feeling like these are clothes that are supposed to fit me, and when they don't, I take them to a tailor and I get them hemmed or whatever the case may be. And I've actually had a patient who bought a whole bunch of clothes at the store. They totally fit her when she tried them on, went home, started hanging them in the closet, and said, I don't wear this size, and took them all back to the store. because she couldn't believe that she was that slender. I have a patient who works in fashion. She said, you would not believe the number of people who try on something in the store, walk out, it looks beautiful on them, and she says, would you like me to wrap that up for you? And she says, they say, no, I'm not buying it because I don't wear that size. And she's like, but you are wearing that size, right? But this is the kind of head games that we play with ourselves, and it causes huge problems. It's not just related to women, it's certainly related to men too, and it is, the key is that vision is not all, body image is not all about vision. If we all saw the same thing, there would never be 5 eyewitness accounts of the same thing that happened differently, right? If I see a little old lady get hit by a bike, that's upsetting, but if the little old lady is my grandma, then I'm very upset, and it was a tragedy, and it was they were driving 100 miles an hour on the bike, right? Our emotions affect what we see when we look in the mirror, and so sometimes if you're feeling down, you look in the mirror and you see something that doesn't look good to you, and we pile this in with the messages. This is another example of an ad. Wipe that I hate fractions look off his face in less than 15 minutes. What does this kid need? He might need a hug, he might need a tutor, he might need an evaluation for a learning disability, I don't know. But he doesn't need s'mores made out of breakfast cereal. What? That doesn't make any sense. But food fixes our problems is a message that we are very comfortable with. This one says, taste like somebody loves you. This looks like a little boy who no one could be at his karate recital, or I don't know what it's called when you perform in karate, okay, so sorry, but they sent him pudding, and that's how he knows that somebody cares, right? Valentine's Day is coming up. True love. It's a cookie. Please. Well, that leads to this. Turns out raiding the fridge can be good for a broken heart. And I'm sorry to say that this is actually an ad for when soy was approved by the American Heart Association as being good for cardiac health. And so we have this, turns out raiding the fridge can be good for a broken heart. Terrible message. And this girl, I can see her scapula here. So if she's raiding the fridge very often, she's clearly doing some compensatory measures as well. And also, by the way, you can see that it is dark and she is in the fridge in the night when nobody else is around. This is a picture of a person with a serious eating and emotional problem, and yet this is the picture in an ad saying that soy products are good for heart health. This tells me how disturbed our society has become when it comes to what is really healthy. So, at the end of the day, this is what I would like for all of you. Freedom, right? Doesn't that picture kind of represent freedom to you? If you're feeling like this, you need to get out and about. You need to get someone to talk to you in your life. There are professionals galore at this university. I met them all this morning. They are amazing. They are ready to help. Get to a place where you move because you're a mammal, where you feel supported, where you can eat mostly nutritious foods because they taste good to you, where you occasionally eat something like this because you can, because your body knows what to do with that food, and where this girl, for example, represents, as I showed in my very first slide, that she is eating a giant ice cream cone compared to herself. She's probably going to eat a little bit of it and throw it away because she's a normal, healthy eater, and there's no one here to tell her, I paid $4 for that ice cream, so you're going to eat it all, right? She's just going to eat how much she wants and be done with it, and then she's going to roller skate off. Not because she has to burn off the calories, but simply because she's a little human mammal that needs to move. And so she's going to eat, and she's going to move, and she's going to grow up and have a really healthy life. And if that path has been derailed for you in any way, you don't have to become a new person. You got to go back in time with a therapist or a dietitian and figure out where it went wrong and start on a healthier path so that you can end up doing the adult version of this. Thank you very much for your time. And I will stay and answer any questions. Usually questions about this kind of thing are pretty personal. No one wants to ask them in front of a big group. So I'll stay here and I'm happy to answer questions, and I will turn off the microphone because that would be funny if I did it and you thought you were asking a personal question. So thanks, everybody.